And look what it goes on to say. Do not fret or worry because you see somebody else out there doing really well. They're doing great, but I'm not. People go down the prayer line, boom, that person gets healed, slain in the Spirit, boom. Next person, they get prayed for, healed, and healed, slain in the Spirit, boom. They skip you and go to 3 people past you. What just happened? Excuse me. Opportune time. Opportune time. You're not worth it. God wasn't going to heal you anyway. It wouldn't have worked even if He had touched you. It's an opportune time for the enemy to jump in. And the most powerful thing, when we teach on supernatural problem solving, the very first step in supernatural problem solving is do nothing. So when we're confronted with a crisis, the first thing you do is nothing. You wait and you rest in the Lord. And do you think that's not an opportune time? You know what? You need to panic. You need to be freaking out right now. Rest? You're doing nothing? Are you kidding me? Don't you even care? All of that stuff comes piling in at an opportune time. So
I know a lot of times I think, well, I'm going to handle this and get through this and then I'll rest too. And it's kind of like the reverse that should happen.
Yeah, start here. Now that rest may be for 5 minutes. It may be only for 5 minutes, but you stopped and you went, wait on the Lord, move, now I can go. It may have only been 5 minutes that you waited and rested, but you stopped to center yourself, if I can use that term, on your worship of Jesus. And Jesus, I'm not moving without you. Unless you go with us, we're not going. So I'm going to go with you, but I'm not going to go without you. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to rest and I'm going to wait and then I'm going to move. It could be 5 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be a week. It could be 2 years. I mean, who knows? He knows the timing. Yeah. See, everything's in His hands. So, another one of our weapons of warfare is the high praises of God. The high praises of God. I'm going to worship Jesus. I told the story. When they took the epidural out of my spine after the surgery, there was no pain transfer. So there was nobody there to pick up the ball after the epidural was taken out. Well, it didn't take very long after that epidural came out, which had numbed me basically from the chest down. I mean, you did what? I could feel nothing.
Right.
You know? And of course now obviously having had 5 kids, I understand. Actually, my wife Sharon never had she never had one of those. But I understand women, that's what they get, right? And it numbs you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so I didn't feel a thing. Well, here I am with that epidural out, no pain transfer, bam! Mr. Dean, how is your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's try 1,000. I mean, the pain went through the roof. And 2 of my friends, prophetic ministers, were there visiting me at that exact moment. And when that pain shot through my body, like nothing I've ever experienced or ever want to experience again, all I could do is shout, Jesus, I worship you and you remain worthy. No matter what I'm going through, you remain worthy of my praise and I will praise you. And a nurse walked in and saw me and I don't know what hit her, but her eyes got like this and she went psh, psh. And next thing I know, I'm getting a shot of something and I wasn't in pain anymore. I wasn't lucid either, but that's another story.
Eyes were rolling in the back.
But I wasn't in pain. But the high praises of God in my mouth, I will praise you. You know what? And I've shouted. I tell you what, there's been times I've shouted at the devil. I said, if you want to get beside me and worship with me, then come on. Because I'm hitting the floor and I'm going to give him praise. It's funny how he seems to always disappear really fast. But let the high praises of God be in your mouth. And, in addition, the two-edged sword. Yeah. However, on the other hand, it is written. On the other hand, it is written. So don't tell me, devil, that my God is not great enough when I know it says my arm is not so short. So these are weapons of warfare. Our weapons of warfare are not carnal. Let's see. The weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful. Never mind. So, would you bring me that stool, please?
This one?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm finding my...
Want to sit on?
No, because it's too low. Thank you. So, finding my strength wing. So it says, the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful, the destruction of fortresses. We're destroying speculations, every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. We're taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. This is a weapon of war. So when I was listening to the video, someone in my family, very close to me, asked, what does that mean? Cheryl asked me in the video. So I thought, let's get into this. What is this? So I looked in the King James. It says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, arresting the thought, taking that thought, arresting it, taking it into custody, that I will rule. If you take a thought into captivity, what are you doing? You're ruling over the thought. So you're not subject to the thought now. The thought's not ruling you. Now you're taking the thought and taking charge of the thought. Excuse me, thought. We're going to go to Jesus and find out what he has to say about it, rather than the thought ruling you. In the Amplified, it says, inasmuch as we refute arguments and theories and reasoning and every proud and lofty thing that sets itself up against the true knowledge of God, because more often than not, a lot of those thoughts are not in agreement with God's Word. They're not positive. They're not constructive. And I love the Phillips version. This is actually amazing. Our battle is to bring down every deceptive fantasy. That's amazing.
I like that.
I know. I read that and I went, our battle is to bring down every deceptive fantasy and every fantasy, I did it twice, and every imposing defense that men erect against the true knowledge of God. We even fight to capture every thought until it acknowledges the authority of Christ. Wow. Let me try that again. Our battle is to bring down every deceptive fantasy and every imposing defense that men might erect against the true knowledge of God. We even fight to capture every thought until it acknowledges the authority of Christ. So I grab that thought and say, thought, let's go talk to Jesus. Let's see how that thought measures up against what Jesus thinks about it. Now I've involved the Lord in that conversation. So I've arrested that thought. I'm going to read this one here. It says, in the Message, it says, we use our powerful God tools for smashing warped philosophies. We use our powerful God tools for smashing warped philosophies, tearing down barriers erected against the truth of God, fitting every loose thought and emotion and impulse into the structure of the life that is shaped by Christ. That's the Message. Now I'm not a big Message fan, but I like that because I try to stay more word for word. But you know what? There's a lot of beauty in that. So understanding and again taking a hold of these thoughts. In the Greek, obedience is upakoi, and it means compliance or submission. Obedience means compliance or submission. It's like thought, you're going to comply with what Jesus has to think about this. Thought, you're going to submit to Jesus and what He thinks about this. So I'm going to involve the Lord in my thinking process. So what happens oftentimes, at least for me, is what I've done in the past is I get this thought and it's like, Lord, I'll check back with you later. Let me go toy with this for a little while between just me and the thought, independent of the Lord, and it never works out. It never works out. And let's put it this way, the fruit of it is nothing compared to when I say, excuse me, thought, excuse me, time out, let's see what Jesus has to think about this. I'm going to grab you, let's go talk to Jesus. And say, Jesus, I was just thinking, what do you think? Now he's involved in the thinking process. So speculations is logogismos, and this is beautiful, speculation, logogismos. Computation, analysis, reasoning, decisions of the conscience, contemplation, actions taken as a result of a verdict that you rendered of thought or conscience. That's what speculations are. Let me read that thought. When it says here in New American Standard, destroying speculation, speculation is logogismos. So all of these versions had to deal with that Greek word and figure out how they were going to do it. But it means, speculations means computations, analysis, reasoning, decisions of the conscience, contemplation, actions that are taken then as a result of a verdict that you rendered of your thoughts or conscience. So you took a thought, you rendered a verdict and decided, this is what I decided. So I was sitting there contemplating a thought. I said, I think that I will have this tube removed by August 1st. That's my thought. Then the Lord asked me, He said, so, where'd you come up with that thought? And I was like, well, okay, I'm back. I don't know, I was just thinking. He says, well, think again. And I know it's going to be a little bit later than that. But see, I had a thought. I rendered a verdict. But when I took it to Jesus, or Jesus came to me, thank goodness, He had a different point of view. He had a different way of looking at it. So I would rather do it His way.
So I'm taking notes and categorizing this stuff. So we've got rest,
Take it off.
high praises.
Hey, brother, bless you. What's that?
So we've got rest, high praises, giving high praises, and this is taking thoughts captive. Is that how you
Thoughts captive.
categorize that one?
Yeah, taking thoughts captive, and we're taking them to Jesus. So
You're not just taking them and holding on to them.
correct. We're going to go talk to Jesus about this thought. Amen. And so that's really. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay, good. So Hosea 6:5, it says, therefore I have hewn them in pieces by the prophets, so I'm going to prophesy into my situation. I've taken my thoughts captive. I'm going to get in the Spirit, so I'm going to begin now to exercise what the Word is. I've got the two-edged sword, and I'm going to begin to prophesy into my situation based on what the Word says. Job 22:28 says, you will decree a thing and it will be established. So there's a promise, and this is a good promise. There's been a little debate on what do we do with all the words in Job, Bildad, Shuhite, the Shuhite, and all the buddies there. There's validity in this because we've proven it over and over. You will declare a thing, decree a thing, and it will take place.
Doesn't one version say you will decide and then declare and it will be done?
Yeah, I've only looked at this version on this one.
I like how it says it will be established
For you.
For you.
You don't do it, you decree it, and it's done.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't force it.
Because what you're doing is you're speaking in agreement with the Word, and anytime you're in agreement with the Word,
And
it'll
in
be
faith.
established for you. And in faith.
According to your faith, so be it unto you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is a powerful weapon of war. So, but there's an order here. So like Cheryl's writing down the order. So I rested first before I did anything. What was the next thing?
High praises.
So I went into my high praises. I've got the two-edged sword.
Is the two-edged sword under high praises or second?
Under high praises. So I've got the two-edged sword. I'm going to take every thought captive. So I'm going through a progression here. And then I'm going to start prophesying to my situation based on the word. So these are all weapons of war. So
like
yeah.
examples of that would be like, I am going to be healed. You mean like saying it as it's going to be? Is that what you mean by prophesying into it?
Yeah, well,
Or
declaring.
not like, give me a vision, Lord, about this situation? Is it more like decreeing this is the outcome?
Exactly, the outcome. Calling into being that which is not as though it were. So I declare and decree. But I got to be honest, the way the Lord's been teaching me is I need to be more I'm learning to be very careful about what I declare and decree. Because there's angels ready to go to bat with those declarations. So I don't want frivolous. I don't want to be frivolous or unthoughtful with the mind of Christ and just frivolously using that phrase and using it as a cliche. I want to make sure my heart connects with faith to what I'm decreeing and declaring, because I know I'm in agreement with the Word. So I'm not just frivolously just using it because it sounds spiritual. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. A question I had is, you made a comment about the tube being out by August. Then you took that thought captive.
Yes.
Now the reality is you didn't make a declaration.
No.
And then it was.
No.
But and so that's where our declarations, we have to be careful with our declarations because they could be our thoughts rather than His thought.
Right, exactly. We want to be in agreement. That's why we take to the obedience of Christ, to get the mind of Christ, to know what is His plan and will. And so it was fortunate for me that He tapped me on the shoulder and said, basically, where'd you come up with that thought? You said August 1st, but where'd that come from? Well, where it came from was out of my flesh. It wasn't out of the Spirit. It was just something arbitrary that I just picked, So when I got in agreement with Him, then He said it could be a little later than that. So I've asked Him, though, my appeal to Him is before September, before Chicago. That's my appeal, and I feel good about that, and I feel He's in agreement with that. Which means I have to really focus on doing what I've got to do to get my health in the right place.
KCIA business meeting in Chicago.
So I've really got.
I just want to take a bunch of food cartons or try to transport liquid like that.
No, I just can't do it. That would be impossible. But God in His wisdom is showing me what I've got to do on a daily basis to increase my protein, which I'm doing, and my liquid intake and so forth. He's giving me the wisdom of what to do. And now He just says to me, He says, and that date that He gave me is not fixed. Because He could come back and surprise me.
Exactly.
So did He give you wisdom to go to Mirador and have Mexican food? Did He give you that?
I don't know about that. That was the price I paid for that. I don't know if that was spirit or flesh. I sure paid for it in the flesh, though. But look at this. So we recognize we're not fighting flesh and blood. Immediately, whenever we're challenged, it's not the person in front of us. That's not the issue. It's what's going on behind that person. Yep. That's where the issue's at. That's where the fight's at. Yeah. And Nina, I got to commend you. What you shared a little earlier in your situation that you mentioned is you did exactly the right thing. We cannot fix one another. We can't necessarily fix people. All we can do is trust God. We have to trust God. And so we're not wrestling with people or flesh and blood. It's what's going on behind the scenes that's motivating and pushing or pulling or holding back. So we're not fighting flesh and blood. So we got to get in the spirit and not try to fix it in the natural or confront it. Well, there's a time to confront it, yes. But we have to have real wisdom in this context of spiritual warfare, of discerning. Okay?
We can take our thoughts captive, but we can't take other people's thoughts captive.
Right.
Correct. Correct.
And how we react, we can make a choice.
Correct.
And we can bring that in line. But how somebody else reacts, we can pray,
right,
request,
Yes.
But they have to make the choice.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and especially in a marriage, you know, a lot of times, you know, Dad, you need to minister to your daughter, or Dad, you need to minister to your son, because only Papa can change son, only Papa can change daughter. We can't change each other, and unfortunately, and we don't try. The other thing is, we're going to go into battles. See, we're being prepared to go into battles. That's part of this whole thing. That's why our focus is raising up overcomers, so we can go into battle, so we can go to the reservation, so we can go out in the streets, so we can go do these things, because we've learned to be overcomers, and we're not going to experience any kind of backlash or any of that other goofy stuff out there. We're going to go out and win. We're going to go out as winners and come home as winners and stay winners, because we've learned a thing or two about spiritual warfare. So we are going to go out, but the point is, do not fear, because the Lord is with us. When you know God is with you, I tell you, the most powerful thing that came over me Saturday afternoon, after talking about going to the reservation, I knew in my spirit, I knew that I knew that I knew with the deepest convictions to the deepest part of my heart, we were going to the reservation in agreement with God's heart. It was the will of God. He was with us. There was no doubt. And when there is no doubt, it becomes effortless. You just go do it. So when you go out to face them, don't fear, the Lord's with you. So take the war to the enemy. You know, so behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will injure you. Nothing will injure you. It's really amazing how many Christians, especially charismatics, don't want to talk about spiritual warfare because they're afraid of the backlash. And they talk about it. Well, if I go out there and on the street and witness, I'm just worried that, you know, the enemy's going to come and put a sickness on me and an illness on me, but it says, you will tread upon the power of the enemy and nothing will injure you. Now we're smart. We're not foolish. We put on the full armor of God. We plead the blood of Jesus. We go in agreement with Him. So we're not just going to run out into the battle naked, you know. That would be ridiculous. You know, I never went on watch without a Red Bull in my uniform. 2 o'clock, I had to wake up at 1 a.m. I had to wake up at 1 a.m. to go to work at 2 in the morning. Now, who does things like that? So, at 1 a.m., my alarm would sound, and my eyes are closed. My arm would go up like this, drop over, pick up a Red Bull. Then I'd sit up, boing, and I'd go to work.
I wish they woke me up like that.
But our rejoicing, see, we keep things in perspective. He says, nevertheless, rejoice in this. Do not rejoice that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life.
When we had that KCIA call the other day, maybe we discussed this last week too. No, we wouldn't have. They talked about, like, God puts you in a new place of authority, and then people are saying you're going to get more backlash from Satan then, you know, like He puts more power on you and people are afraid of the new place of authority because they think there's more backlash.
Higher levels, greater doubles. Kind of thing.
What was that?
Higher levels, greater doubles.
That's
Someone said
exactly
that.
what someone said.
And that is a cliche, but listen to what happened.
And so what somebody else was saying is what happens, He's giving you more authority because He's putting you in a higher place of authority. There's more angels that He's giving you. We shouldn't fear that. He's putting us out there.
But you see how that spiritual cliche slipped in there?
Yep.
It slipped in. We had to take, and they did. More people on the line, well, I don't know, I shouldn't necessarily say that, but wise people on the call nipped that in the bud and said, wait a minute. Let's stop that right here and right now. Because that is just a spiritual cliche that we're throwing around and it's not accurate. He intends us to win. And not to be injured.
Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
If I come into agreement with the wrong thought, then I could be injured, right?
It's positive. You vote. So,
If I open myself up
right,
by agreeing with a wrong thought,
right.
then I've not got the armor that I need, because part of the armor
Like-
not to be injured is to take every thought captive. Is
You're
that
putting a
right?
little kink in your armor?
Exactly. No,
I mean, it's just, because I know a lot of injured people who are hurting, who are making bad decisions.
correct.
And they're coming into agreement with, even who they think they are,
Correct.
not knowing they're injured.
Yep. You're so right. And if you're taking notes, Genesis chapter 4, 6 and 7 is the point of this. See, when Jesus comes in Revelations 3, it says he stands at the door and knocks. That's a gentleman. He knocks. You exercise your will and let him in. But that's not how the enemy works. He's an opportunist. So in Genesis 4, 6 and 7 it says, Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. It's crouching at the door of your heart, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. You've got to keep that door shut. So the enemy doesn't knock. He's crouching, waiting for a crack in the door. And when you sit there and agree with a thought that is not of God, you've just cracked that door. And the enemy is going to take that opportunity to jump. Jeremiah 1:19. Any comments? Any thoughts? Okay. So Jeremiah 1:19. They will fight against you, but they will not overcome you. For I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord. So all that stuff that's going on out there, God's saying, I'm with you. I will deliver you. I'm protecting you. I'm just, on one level, like the Lord said to me a long time ago, is to have a childlike heart. On one level, I see myself as a little guy. I saw a vision of myself 5 years old. And in one respect, I'm still that 5-year-old in my heart. A childlike faith. Unless you become as a little child, you'll never enter into the kingdom of heaven. But then he said to me, and you will be a mighty warrior who destroys the work of the enemy. A childlike heart, but a warrior. Only God can do that kind of stuff. How does that work? But they're in balance. There's the time alone with him. And I said to him, what's funny is my dad is 88 years old and he still has a childlike heart. I can see that childlike heart in him, and it just amazes me. So, I agree, I'm with you. Good timing. So what are our weapons of war? Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but we've got the name of Jesus, the blood of the Lamb, the Word of God, we've got prayer, we've got the prayer of agreement, just simply trusting the Lord, the armor of light, the full armor of God, being in fellowship, praying for one another.
Armor of light.
The armor of light, that's Romans.
How is that different than our spiritual armor?
Romans 13:12 talks about the armor of light, but he doesn't go into the details of what that is. So you have to go to Ephesians to find what that is. So he kind of
You can have like
teases
a
you.
laser pen that blinds him. Armor of light.
So he teased us in Romans and then answered the question in Ephesians. Praying for one another, keeping our minds stayed on Jesus, our declares and decrees, speaking in tongues. Generosity is a weapon of warfare. That's a powerful one. Generosity is a powerful weapon of warfare. Supernatural problem solving, confidence, and one of the things that I'm, going to probably talk about more is the power. God is raising up people that are confident. Because as I study those people in healing ministries, whether it's Catherine Kuhlman or John G. Lake or Dowie or Maria Etter, you go across the board, Oral Roberts, you go across the board. There's one thing that's consistent with every single one of them. Smith Wigglesworth. If you look at every one of those things, one of those people, the one constant through every one of them is confidence. absolute confidence. When I pray for you, you will be healed. I'm not quite there yet. But I understand that's where we're going. Because confident people, it's really hard to mess with you. It's very hard to mess with you when you are confident in the Spirit. Now, just a side note, confidence can be misconstrued by the unlearned and the immature as
Arrogance.
arrogance.